grab me here to present next year's budget here. So I'll go right into our slide. I like to start off with the success that we've had in the athletic department. Our participation rate for the 7 through 12 right now is about 50%. It's a slight decrease from where we have been. We're usually between 54 to 56%. But I'm convinced there's a correlation between not having a full slate of modified sports last year, where we did not have a full modified fall season and a full modified winter season in the 2021 school year. We came back for what we visited we revisited our modified sports when the spring season came. So there's middle school students that still haven't participated in the sport of their liking because that hasn't happened yet. It's just the way I can run the numbers. Our GPAs of our athletes continue to be higher than the non-athletes, and with that, it brings us, we're awarded the New York State Scholar Athlete teams. We are very successful in the Con Edison Scholar Athlete Award. Each week is provided each week to one student athlete in the area. We have won and we continue to nominate kids throughout the year for that. We have league champions, sectional champions at the team level, at the individual level. Recently, you may have saw that we've had some track athletes become county champions last week. Just recently this week, we had a gymnast win the Division I championship. So we've had success on the playing floor and on the fields as well. One thing that I take a lot of pride in is promoting the athletes and our programs that we have in our district. And it can be done a variety of ways. You may see senior athlete recognition ceremonies throughout the year for our sports. Our annual Hen Hut Hall of Fame weekend this year was a big hit in the community when we inducted our first responders, our veterans, and our doctors and medical personnel in the community. And we had a really packed house here on a Friday afternoon before a game here. So they were delighted to come back. Many of them were alumni coming back and supporting us in that matter. So the Hall of Fame weekend continues to be an area for that matter. As I said, I take pride in nominating kids for any awards, whether it's the Con Ed Award, the local media, sometimes they have River Journal Athlete of the Month, so we continue to do that, and it's something I take pride in. I was asked to make a presentation at the state level 2 years ago at the state conference on that exact topic, promoting your athletes and programs in a positive manner in the community. So I do take pride in, and I'll continue to do that for our student athletes as they are participating here in the district. So I broke up the projected budget into the next two slides. This slide is the salary budgeted lines, broken down into three areas: coaching salaries, the staff salaries, and the limited overtime, just a small bit there. The coaching salaries, I want to touch base on that percentage increase there because it is a little higher than normal. It's the 2% contractual increase for that matter, but it is a little bit higher, and that is correlated to the merged programs that we have. So currently we have 4 merged athletic programs. Our boys and girls swim programs are merged. Our ice hockey team is a merged program, and our gymnastics team is a merged program. And specifically in the past, the girls swim program at Croton has been one where in the past few years we reciprocated their athletes coming to us in the form of skiers, but now, and then we would be there in girls swimming. They don't have any more skiers with us, so therefore us just having the girls swimming there, we have to put a little bit to contribute to that salary there for that coach there, so that's where that increase comes in. The staff salaries are correlated to myself, Meg Reiner, and Nicole Loretti in the athletic office, and that's a contractual increase. And then the overtime, which applies in the summertime, it always happens in the summer. Inventory comes in, all the new supplies come in, reconditioning of certain uniforms. So before COVID, it was always around $2,000 to $2,500. This year I went down to $1,500, so I'm looking to go back to the $2,000 that we'll probably need. It's usually only used in the summertime as we prepare for the upcoming Scholastic season. Any questions on that slide there? Okay. Next slide's got a lot more to it, so I'll put that one. So as I said, this slide has a lot more, and I definitely want to talk in detail to some of the lines that we have here. The equipment line we're going to keep as is, so it's $10,000. We have ample things that we need to get for that we'll be able to handle with that. So we're going to keep that and keep the total line on that one. The next two I want to talk to kind of together, the supplies and the contractual lines. So the supplies line is exactly what it is. It's our It's our supplies, it's all the balls that we have to get, it's all the, the equipment that you might have for a particular event going on or a particular team. The contractual line applies to, a lot of that goes to our reconditioning, which is any piece of equipment, hard equipment that we have in sports, whether it's catcher's equipment, lacrosse equipment, football equipment, any hard piece of equipment, I have to get it recertified every year for safety reasons. So that's a large piece of our contractual line. Anything in regards to tournaments and invitationals comes with a cost of that. So if a track team participates in a specific type of games, like this recently were the Hispanic games at the Armory, there's a cost to that too. So all of that goes into that matter. The increase that you see, the 7,000 and the 8,000, along with the percentage, that's only the percentage increase from this current year to next year. But if you go back 2 years to my budget, those numbers, the 61,245 and the 64,300, that's identical. So it would be a 0% increase from where we were pre-COVID till now. So that's an important piece from that. So thus, coming back next year in terms of sustainability, you're not going to see these numbers like that. We'll be able to maintain that. So I was able to this year save some money for us and reutilize a lot of the inventory that we had in terms of supplies. And with the contractual piece, and I'll speak to the reconditioning piece of the equipment, we didn't have modified football last year, which was 30 to 50 kids, depending on what area we had. So none of those helmets had to go out for recertification and saved a lot of money on there. So we had money that we were able to save there, so I saved that money this year, but we're going to need that to go back to the numbers last year. So again, I think that's an important piece, that the 2-year piece there would be a 0% increase. The BOCES line is one I also would like to speak to a little bit in terms of detailing that one. And as I go to my monthly meetings with my peers, they are all learning how the BOCES line is applied to the athletics, because it can get detailed on you and there's a lot of different variables that apply to that. So again, for this line, you might, the 12,785 increase is really out of our control. So to give you a snapshot, we are Hendrick Hudson. We are a part of Section 1 athletics. There's 11 sections across the state. We are Section 1 athletics, and Section 1 is governed by the Southern Westchester BOCES office, and that's where it's housed out of that. So with the housing out of the Southern Westchester BOCES office, there is a Southwest BOCES office fee, and you are assessed that fee depending on the size of your school. So we are a Class A school for most sports, and there's a fee for Class A schools, and that fee for next year will be $21,108. It's actually about a $1,300 increase from where we were previously. So that's one piece of this BOCES line. The next piece of the BOCES line are the Section 1 fees, and this comes from a base fee of $500, and then you get assessed a fee depending on the number of teams you have. So for any varsity team you have, you are assessed a fee of $325. That's per team. So the current rate is $225 per team. It's the first time in almost 15 years that rate has increased, the $225 per team. So the $100 increase per team with 27 varsity teams, that's a $2,700 increase for those Section 1 fees. And again, that has not been applied. There's been 0 increase in the last 15 years approximately. We also get assessed a merged team fee. With 4 merged team fees, the increase goes from $112 per team to $200 per team. So it's approximately $100 for those 4 teams. So when you put those Section 1 fees together, the increase is approximately $3,500 there. And again, those are assessed fees from the BOCES office, from the Section 1 office. I did confirm today, as I met with the Finance Committee last night, that number, that $225 per varsity team, hadn't gone up in 10 to 15 years. I think it's closer to 15, if not more. And the expectation is it wouldn't go up next year at all either. So again, in terms of sustainability, I don't see that increasing it there. The next piece of the BOCES line, it's the largest piece that we pay for, is BOCES assigns officials to all the games. So officials are outside contractors hired by BOCES, and then they are approved by BOCES and assigned to our games. Anytime we have a home game, we have to pay the officials from our line. We're in charge of paying the officials for that. So for myself, what I have to do is I have to basically project all the potential home games for all of our programs from modified up through varsity, and project how many officials will be on each game and come up with a number. And there's an officials contract with BOCES, so a varsity official next year is $126 per game, JV is 103, and modified is $95 per game. So when you take all of our teams with all the potential home games, it's about a $76,000 projection for paying of officials. So that's a large piece of that right there as well. And again, that's a contractual obligation with that. And then there's two more pieces to the BOCES budget line. There is sports billing, which is minimal. There are a handful of sports that's usually cross country, winter track, skiing a little bit, bowling, wrestling. You'll get assessed fees at various times throughout the year, and it could be altogether maybe $5,000 to $6,000. But again, that's not an increase for us at all in that regard for my projections. And then the last piece of the budget line are BOCES program/software that we can get into an agreement with them, and as we save the money with the BOCES services there, and those might be our family ID vehicle. So for those of you that are registered your student athletes preseason, that's a family ID. I get that through BOCES and save some money there. Our impact program, which is the concussion management program, I get that through BOCES. There is also, and then one of the largest pieces for us, which last year was a large increase to us, but it's been a very popular piece for us this year, is Local Live. I've been able to contract Local Live through the BOCES offices in that matter, and that's the Local Live streaming services that we have in our gymnasium and on the main field. And it's the kind of joke I have with all the coaches, because every day after all the games I get the Local Live report and I can actually see how many viewers, so I call it their TV ratings. I let them know who's done very well and who needs to do a little bit better in terms of getting some ratings for us. So, and it is very nice to see that there's sometimes 200 or 300 people in our community, and probably from neighboring communities that are checking in as well on that. And I don't handle the camera. A lot of people think I'm the guy that keeps in charge of the camera. It's actually done remotely, so if there's a camera, if there's a little piece off on that, emails start going crazy. Local Live's down, Local Live camera's off. So I work with them very closely, and they're able to get it for us quickly. But you can tell immediately how popular it is in our community with that matter. So those five pieces, the Southern Westchester BOCES office fees, the Section 1 fees, officials fees, the billing per sport, and then the programs, go directly to where we're at next year, which is the $146,653 for BOCES. And as I said, that $12,000 increase really comes from the two increases that BOCES and Section 1 is imposing for the sport fees. So I know I gave a lot there in those three lines, the supplies, contractual, and BOCES, so I don't see if there's any questions on those matters.
We're going to save questions for the end, if that's okay. It's easier for the viewers to see the presentation all together.
Not a problem. Going down the line here, the chaperone line, I have an increase of $3,475 for a 5.3. As Mr. Hochreiter alluded to, if you come to a Hen Hut Panis volleyball game, if you come to a Hen Hut Panis any game, it could be crowded, it could be madness, and it could be a large amount there. We've had large crowds coming back here in the fall when we had no limit on our capacity for the spectators. This past, the current winter season, although as we went through the COVID there and the numbers rose a little bit, we limited a little bit, but we've now opened it up, and it's been a very popular piece. It's nice to see our community back out there. Those chaperones and the security team are a vital part to the athletic department and the success of it, and just having events run smoothly. As I said last night to the finance committee, a lot of times emotions run high after games, and it's important sometimes having whether it be a security guard, a chaperone, or a staff member on site, walking officials to their cars, teams to their buses. It just helps things run smoothly. And one of the things I said last night as well is that next year we will be in a much more localized league. Most of our sports, our league next year will just be Hendrick Hudson, Panis, Lakeland, and Peekskill. So more localized brings more crowds brings more people, more emotions, and we just need more chaperones. And when you have teams like our volleyball team or our girls lacrosse team, the further you go in sectionals, more games, more crowds, more chaperones needed. So that's why I felt that small increase there was needed as well. The last two lines on this slide, the transportation and the building overtime, those two lines I worked directly with Liz Gillio for the transportation line and Anthony Merlini for the building overtime. So they give me those numbers. The transportation one, full disclosure, when I prepared this one a few weeks ago, I came at $100,000 for next year's, which is a 2%. Liz Gillio may come in $1,000 or $2,000 higher than that, depending on her projections as she prepares her budget down the next few weeks. And then the building overtime, Anthony Merlini and I just kept that at 2%. I do work closely with them as we try to be fiscally responsible for both of those lines. The transportation, whether sometimes we'll do drop-onlys at large events, whether it's an all-day Saturday event. If we know that there'll be parents there to take all their team home instead of having to pay an overtime fee throughout the day, if our drivers will do a drop-only. So we do that often. We try to maintain the fiscal responsibility as much as we can. And then the next slide is just basically a summary of the previous two, the total contractual and total non-salary. So most of the increases, specifically the ones that are contractual and the BOCES ones, are really out of our control, and then the supplies and contractual athletic lines are really just getting us back to a full season of interscholastic athletics. And then my next two slides, I've touched base on all these. So these are all the line increases specifically that we had. I wanted to make sure it was in the presentation for community members to see it. So the next two slides are those line increases that I spoke about. I spoke a little bit about being fiscally responsible. It's something that I continue to do. I work with Mr. Catalan throughout the year, making sure that we are doing that, even as much as checking and saving as much inventory as we can on a year-to-year basis. I have an increased equipment line, and as I said, working with Liz Gilio and Anthony Merlini as in transportation building overtime is something that I clearly do every week. We continue to offer ample opportunity for our kids. So we are now 31 different varsity programs for a total of 64 teams. So there continues to be a lot of opportunity for them, whether it's an individual sport, a team sport. I think we have a lot to offer here for the number of students that we have. I always finish up with the saying, and I give this credit to our veteran coach, Coach Dutch Bricks. It's a great day to be a sailor. That's what he said every day, so it's kind of stuck with us. He gets the credit for that. So thank you very much. I know we have some questions.
Yes, thank you for that very thorough presentation. And it seems our sports programs are way more popular than our board meetings, looking at the numbers of viewers. Bill, you had questions.
Can you elaborate on the BOCES? It seems, we talked about it in the Finance Committee last night, that the BOCES, some of the fees per team are going up substantially. Could you elaborate on what BOCES is giving a cause for such large percentage increases?
So yeah, as I said earlier, so we get when it comes to the Section 1 fees, it went from $450 per school to $500 per school, so we start with a $500 fee. From that, you get that raise that I said from $225 per team to $325 per team. I did follow up today with Section 1 office. That number hasn't rose in close to 15 years. And one of the biggest reasons that Section 1 has to implement these, as we all are having a battle, is navigating the costs of COVID, the post-COVID years. For instance, the volleyball team that I had to take up to states at Glens Falls, in previous years, we would put 4 girls to a room and do that. Now, in post-COVID times, the Section 1 teams at advanced states are 2 players per room, so it's double their room size. So when Section 1 has to prepare their budget for next year, and all the teams that they have to get prepared for states, that's one specific reason for that matter. Busing is another one, getting an extra bus for a state team that may go up. For instance, our wrestlers, if we have anybody advanced to the Section 1, there'll be a Section 1 wrestling bus, and I know that they have not crammed down the people onto the bus for that matter. So in post-COVID times, Section had to implement some extra costs due to situations like that. Those are 2 big correlations. But I think more than anything, it goes back to the fact that there hasn't been an increase for that in the last 15 years. And as I said, I keep saying it, I don't expect that increase to happen again next year as well. So it'll be nothing at all if something minimal.
Thank you. And you were talking about officials going up also. Do all districts purchase the officials through BOCES, or is that something you can contract directly?
Yes. Contrary to what many people think, they think I hire the officials. And when they're not happy with them, they come and say, the guy you got was terrible. That's not the way. So as I said earlier, the officials are contracted through BOCES. So every single member of Section 1, you pay an officials fee. I will get billed a fall season, a winter season, and a spring season for the officials. So yes, every school in Section 1 gets officials through BOCES and pays through BOCES.
So it's not a choice of the district?
Not a choice of the district. Also contrary to what many people think to me.
Thank you, Tom. And then I have a question more for Enrique. Although the athletic budget is not a big percentage of the overall budget. If each of our budgets had a 4.8% increase, it would be an issue and we wouldn't be able to keep in line with our, we usually try to keep 2%, plus we're dealing with our energy pulling out. Is this in line with your overall budget and
Yes.
already accounted for, even though this is a much higher percentage than hopefully, what our overall budget's going to be?
Thank you, Bill. Actually, the numbers I gave you as my higher and lower end includes these numbers.
Okay, so it's already accounted
It's
for.
already accounted in these numbers, in the
Okay.
numbers that I just gave you. Remember, some years, something goes up, but some other part goes down. For example, this year, ERS, Employee Retirement System, went down from 17% to 13.5%. So one goes up, the other one goes down, but definitely we looked at every month and no question that if everything goes up 4.8%, we would have to fund some programs. But so far, like I said, this is included in our budget, and our budget is a 2.7% increase. So it's part of it.
Okay, so it's already
Yeah,
fits in and
it's already paid.
Okay, and, we appreciate the background that although some of these look like they went up a lot compared to 2 years ago, pre-COVID, they're exactly the same.
Yeah, that's why I did try to maintain that.
So
Yes.
thank you for sharing that.
Thank you for
information.
recognizing that as well, thank you.
Sorry. I didn't know you were here. So yeah, I agree. I think that's very fiscally responsible, but I'm just wondering if we're seeing inflation, what are we not getting that we did get? If everything is going up in price and we haven't added any more money to equipment and supplies, are our athletes, our students not getting something that they should, or how are we making those cuts if
Are you asking like for this past year, well, how I cut it down this year or moving
like
forward?
going forward? So equipment this year is 10,000, next year is 10,000, cost for everything is going up. Does that mean we're getting less supplies in actuality?
Typically for the equipment, I try to rotate or I try to protect where we'll need something. For instance, with our new facility here for track and field, with our steeplechase pits, those large pieces of equipment, that falls under that line. It depends on what, I kind of take all the requests from the coaches as to see what they want. If there's some large pieces of equipment, last year our football team wanted a new tackling machine, so I was able to purchase that through it all. So it really depends on what the requests come in from me on. I'm gathering all that from the coaches now, but that being said, I will make sure I'm just going to choose something that fits into that criteria. If something comes in higher than that, then it'll be something that I would ask for in the next 2 years for that matter.
Okay, so
That makes
nobody's asked you for something that you really had to say no for.
No, not yet.
Like, I'm just wondering if we got uniforms every 3 years, are we going every 4 years now to cut the budget? That's kind of what
Yeah,
I'm asking.
and then-
Is that what we're doing, or we're just?
Well, yes, so even like all those, where I cut back on the supplies and the contractual pieces, we're really are detailed with our inventory system and what we have and what we can reuse for next year. So to the point where if a softball coach asks, I want four cases of paintballs, if I know I have 2, I'm just going to get 2, and maybe for that matter. So there's nothing at this point in time where we're not getting because of our budget. We're able to handle almost all of our requests and needs for the programs, that's for sure.
Okay, so I have a quick question about one comment you made towards the beginning of the presentation, where you talked about the GPA of athletes versus non-athletes tends to be higher. So this is not necessarily a question for just you, it's also for Dr. Roller, Mr. Hochreiter. So what is it about the athletic programs that would give someone an educational advantage that would raise their GPA? And if that is the case, because I've never seen these stats before, what are we missing for the non-athlete students that is not providing the incentive for them to get equivalent
That's a
GPAs?
great question, and I'll give you the answer that the kids give to me quite often. We have a non-eligibility academic policy to all of our extracurricular activities. And I work closely with the coaches and trying to devise strategies and to try to keep kids off of that list. That's the idea, and keep them and moving forward with their grades. I have kids all the time saying, Mr. Baker, my grades are so much better when I'm playing a sport because I know that that list is coming out. And I know I have to, so sometimes it's pure motivation from that individual knowing that there's accountability from a non-eligibility policy for that matter. They will say to me, they'll come sometimes to myself, a lot of times they'll come to a coach saying, is there anything you can help me out with? We've had student tutors, I'll say, we set that up through some of our programs and work with kids, but they come to that knowing that they don't want to be that one on their team saying, I have to sit for the next 2 weeks because of the academic eligibility policy. So I think that's a direct correlation from my end.
So that's a great comment. So the question is, for students that are in the arts, for students that are going to extracurricular activities, why are their GPAs lower? What incentive should we be providing to them to want them to raise their GPAs? In other words, it seems like being an athlete gives you some sort of different incentive. Why are we not applying that philosophy to the rest of our students?
It is an extracurricular policy though. That applies to all extracurricular.
Any extracurricular activities.
This is
If
scary
you're
ones
in
that
play,
come from
if you are in the
Drama club, the drama club
maybe
is
some of them up now.
So maybe this breakdown is not fair then, right? Because you're saying GPAs of athletes versus non-athletes, but it might be athletes versus students in the arts versus students, why are you saying no?
I think it's purely athletes that he's talking about.
Right.
But I've never ran into extracurricular versus non-extracurricular students, if that's what you're asking.
Okay, it was very striking to me to see that, because I'm sure there are a lot of other students that are doing very well that are not athletes.
Absolutely. It doesn't mean that they're not there. That's for sure.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Are there any other questions? There seem to be some concerns about the increase in the non-salary budget lines. Given our overall budget, it's still a very modest increase in dollar amount. Are we all okay with these increases, even though it's a higher percentage than we usually target for? I'm assuming that the Finance Committee is okaying this budget and recommending it?
I mean, it all makes sense, and like I said, like it's been discussed a couple of times, a lot of this is just bringing it up to what it was pre-COVID, because he was able to, during COVID, didn't have to do a lot of things, which lowered the budget 1 year, but then had to go back up subsequently to what it was. So a lot of this is, that number's not real compared to a couple of years ago. So yes, I'm totally okay with
And
this.
if I can jump in, that's an important point, because we are building a budget today. Tom, we'll use Tom as an example. Tom's building a budget today for a sports season that starts in more than 12 months. In terms of estimating supplies and equipment and transportation and whether they go to states and how many referees we need or chaperones. So these numbers are assumptions based on looking in the rearview mirror based on trend data. And that's what makes budgeting in school districts very, very difficult. Going back to earlier, my comment about when the board approves the budget in early April for expenses that we will still be incurring 16 months from now. So part of the reason, or one of the reasons, as Enrique said in his presentation, we did well because we were budgeting, if you go back 2 years ago, let's go back exactly 2 years ago, we were budgeting for the 2021 school year not knowing that we would be in a pandemic and not nearly expend our budget because of what came, what ended up happening. So how do you accrue fund balance? Because you have expectations of spending dollars that you may not, that are out of our control. So I think it's an important piece of information to share with our public, that these are assumptions based on trend data, but there are a lot of variables, especially in athletics. We don't know how many players we'll have. We don't know even what class we'll be in, how many away games, home games, so on and so forth.
And you're talking about things going down because of COVID, but Enrique has brought up many times that energy costs fluctuate phenomenally.
Sure.
So he could be trying to project out in 1 year when the cost of energy could go up phenomenally. So yes, I appreciate that. It's an incredibly difficult process when you're trying to project that 16 months out.
Bill, if you remember when we asked the board to approve to do the solar panels, it was not only about being green, saving money. It's like, I have a 20-year contract that goes 2%. So I know how much I would have to pay in 40% of my electricity next year. NIPA is going up 25%. You're going to hear that in 2 weeks. But at least it's only 60%. The other 40% I know is 2%.
Thank you.
I was gonna give you
Yeah,
the mic.
okay.
Sorry.
Like
Did
a
you
screen.
have a question or you're just handing the mic over?
No, I want to make sure that you had the mic, but it's too late.
Anybody else have questions or comments? All right, thank you, Mr. Baker. That
All
was a
right,
very
thank you very much.
detailed
Appreciate everyone's
budget.
support. Thank you
Yeah.
very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for keeping such a close eye on all the line items and